Hello all, welcome back to my channel. I'm Victoria if you're new here. Hi, nice to meet you. Today I have a fun little reset flow. So maybe you've been traveling on holiday, maybe you have just had other things in your life that took priority and you just want to gently ease back into some regular movement. Well, I got you. So if you are ready, let's get started. So we're gonna start in standing today. We're gonna find about a hip width distance between those feet, soft bend to your knees. And you're just gonna sit up nice and tall, top of the head drawing up towards the ceiling, shoulders down and away from those ears. Ribs are nice and soft, drawing gently towards that ground. And we're just going to clasp our hands behind our back when you're ready. So just like this, interlocking your fingers, but you still want that uprightness in your stance. So your ribs are still nice and soft, drawing towards that mat, top of the head reaching up towards that ceiling. And we're just gonna find a chest opener when we're ready. So you're gonna pull those hands down towards your heels, and you're gonna open up in the chest, looking slightly up. Ribs are still actively drawing towards that mat to stay nice and soft. And then you slowly look forwards, relaxing those arms. Exhaling to pinch at the shoulder blades as you draw your fingers down. Your collarbone opens up wide, you look up. You're gonna inhale at the top, and then exhale to slowly relax, coming back into that neutral. Let's just do that a few more times. In your own time. You should feel it in those collarbones. Just do two. And then one last one. Trying not to crunch at the neck. It's just a slight tilt of that chin up. And then you slowly come all the way back, releasing those hands, maybe shaking it out. It might be a little crampy. And again, we're going to find that tall standing stance. Your arms are down by our side, and let's just do a couple of roll downs to just mobilize our spine and our hips a little bit more. So you're going to tip that chin, tuck that chin in as you start that roll down. Coming up nice, coming down towards that mat nice and slow. Your arms are going to naturally reach down towards the mat, top of the head, approaching that mat as you send everything down, soft bend in those knees. And then exhale to come all the way back up, unfolding at the hips, belly button to spine, unfolding in the hips before we start to stack up in that spine. So it's nice and sequential, and your head returns last. We're gonna take a heel lift. So you're gonna sweep those arms up, keeping them in front of those ears as you find your little tippy toes, then come all the way back down. So we're just gonna alternate between the roll downs and the heel lifts. So exhaling to find that roll down again, nice and slow. Bending your knees at the bottom. Inhaling for one big deep breath through that nose. And then exhaling to pick belly button up to spine and start to find that standing once again. And when your head returns, we're going to sweep those arms up, lift those heels on an exhale, and then inhale to come all the way back down with control. Let's just do one more like this, going nice and slow. There's absolutely no rush. Feeling the articulation in each bone as you send and roll everything down towards that mat. Inhale at the bottom. Exhale to pick yourself back up, nice and slow, using that center to help find that control. And then exhale to lift those heels, arms sweep up. You're gonna bring them all the way down. Lovely. Let's come down onto our backs now. We're gonna come into relaxation. So we want our knees bent, soles of the feet on that ground, and our head and back will come down onto that mat. So you want about a fist width distance between those knees, and your arms are just going to be long down beside you. And so you want to take stock of that spine before we begin, finding that neutral pelvis and spine. So you want the back of those ribs back of the ribs, pressing actively into the mat with just a little bit of space in that lumbar, almost like a blueberry-sized space in that lower back. That is going to be where your neutral is. So we're going to do some hip curls now just to mobilize our spine a bit more and those hips. Tucking that tailbone, rounding it against the mat. You're gonna start to slowly send those hips up, peeling up that spine until you're roughly on those shoulder blades, drawing one long line from your knees to your chest, and you're gonna slowly melt your spine down in reverse, starting with that back of the ribs, the mid-back, keeping that tuck in that pelvis as you come all the way down, refinding that neutral before we go again. So, I don't know if I'm crooked on screen. Exhaling to round and send those hips up. Heels are pushing into the mat. Inhale at the top, keeping those ribs nice and soft. And then exhaling to slowly come all the way down. Using that core, using that center to help control that roll down. If you want to bring in arms, you can, just to kind of challenge your stability and bring in some mobility of those shoulders. You're going to come up on that exhale into that shoulder bridge. You're going to sweep the arms up and back, keeping them hovered by those ears, shoulders away from those ears. And keeping your arms out like this, you're going to start to melt that spine down, bone by bone. Returning that spine into the mat, finding that neutral before we circle our arms all the way back around, placing the arm down. So we're just changing up a little bit. If you've done the other one where I do sweep, sweep, we're doing a sweep circle. Exhaling to send those hips up nice and slow. Again, the arms are just totally optional. You don't have to take them if you don't want to. These are all just some options for you. Let's just do 2 more. Absolutely no rush. And again, if you're bringing those arms up and back, you want to make sure that you're keeping those arms straight and they're not kind of falling towards the ground. And on that last one, wherever you are, we're going to stay in that shoulder bridge. So you're on the shoulder blades, lifting that pelvis, using that glute to support. And we're just going to lift those heels onto our toes and then slowly come all the way down. Exhale to lift those heels. Inhale to bring it down. Let's just go for 4, 3, and 2. Last one, best one. Really using that glute to help support that, and you can either choose to lower the heels or keep them lifted. And we're going to slowly melt that spine down, bone by bone, just like you did in those hip curls. Refinding that neutral before we place our heels down. If you want to bring in the knees for a little hug, feel free. Maybe you want to do a little side to side, a little circle in one direction, another direction. Maybe you want to be crazy and circle those knees. I'm not going to judge you. I can't see you. Okay. When we're ready, you're going to place one leg down at a time, and let's roll over onto our side. And we are going to come into our 4-point kneeling position. We're going to come onto our hands and knees. And you want to line up those wrists beneath those shoulders and knees underneath those hips. And thinking about that spine, you want just a little bit of that curve in your lower back. Your ribs are nice and supported. Top of the head reaching up towards the ceiling, soft bend to those elbows. So let's just take our cat and cows just to, again, mobilize that spine a little bit more. So belly button to spine, you're going to tuck that chin, round through that tailbone, looking at your pelvis, feeling that stretch in the back of your spine and your neck. And you're going to slowly come out of it, Finding that neutral first, and then we're going to continue into that cow, dropping that belly button down, tailbone up, top of the head reaching towards the ceiling. And then again, trying to refine that neutral before we go back into that cat. Exhaling to round in that back. Inhaling to come out of it, finding that flat back. Exhale to find that cow. And then inhaling to return. Let's just do one more in each direction. Again, keeping a soft bend in those elbows if you can. And then once we return to neutral, we're going to, if you want to take a little rest, circle those wrists, feel free. I know it's a bit intense. And if at any time it feels a bit too intense on the wrist, just either take a break or try forming fists, and that might just help strengthen that wrist joint a little bit better. But anyway, wherever we are, let's come back into that forward-point kneeling. Again, trying to find that flat back. Once again, soft bend to that knee. The knees, soft bend to the elbows, top of the head reaching towards the ceiling. And let's just take some arm sweeps. So keeping your shoulders and your hips exactly where they are, you're going to reach that right arm forwards. You're going to swipe them over to the side, reaching towards the back, and your hands are going to rotate naturally. You're going to slowly swoop it back forwards, and then replace that hand. Exhale to reach that left arm forwards. Inhale to sweep it back. Exhale to sweep it forward. And inhale to replace. So your core is going to turn on to make sure that everything else stays nice and centered as your arms reach forwards to the sides and back. And you want to try to keep that arm at the same height if possible. So almost like you're wiping it across the surface of a table. Let's just do one more on each arm. Going nice and slow, trying not to rush through it. Evening out on both sides now. Replace that hand, and let's just again sit back for a little break. Maybe you want to rotate those wrists in between each of our 4-point kneeling exercises. And then when you're ready, we're going to come back onto those hands and knees. We're just going to have a little bit of a restraint builder as well as a bit of core too, because why not? So again, finding wrists underneath those shoulders, knees underneath the hips. We're going to curl those toes underneath. And you probably guessed it, we're taking knee hovers. So finding a soft bend in that elbow. We don't want to lock in that elbow. You're just going to push into the mat, pushing your toes, pushing your hand to lift the knees just a few inches off the mat, and then bring it back down. Exhaling to lift, trying to keep that flat back. Inhaling to bring it down. Going in your own time, trying not to rush, avoiding dropping that head so the back of the head is continuing to reach up towards that ceiling. And let's just do 3. And 2. One last one. And again, maybe you want to just sit back. Give yourself a little break with those wrists. You just have one more, kind of building off of the knee hover. So it's kind of a half plank, half knee hover. You'll see what I mean. Again, last time, coming into 4-point kneeling. Wrists underneath our shoulders, knees under our hips. We're going to extend that right leg out behind us, curling the toes behind us. So we're keeping the toes on the left foot flat, but the ones extended are going to be curled underneath. So on that next exhale, you're going to push into those hands and push into those toes and just lift the knee using that center just a few inches off the mat and then bring it back with control. Exhaling to lift, keeping that flat back. Inhaling to lower. And it's a really, really small little movement. Try not to bring the knee up. You're trying to lift just with the hips and the center. We're not here for long. Let's just do 3, 2, last one. And then you just slide that right knee back under. Go for a nice short break. Maybe a little wiggle of the butt. I don't know. This is what I do in my real studio classes as well. I just tell people to do things. Okay, coming forward. We're gonna swap legs. So I'll just switch over to the side so you can see. Extending that left leg behind me, curling those toes under. I'm going to start to do that lift. So on that exhale, I'm gonna lift that knee, pushing into my hands, pushing into my toes, and set it back down. Really trying to isolate and lead with that movement from that core, from that center. Let's just do 3, 2, and then one last one. Nice. And I'm gonna bring that left knee back under, and we're gonna push into that rest position. Maybe reaching your arms forward, forehead down to the mat. I always have to whisper because I feel like if I talk, it's like right by my mouth. Try not to deafen anyone. Can you imagine going deaf watching a Pilates video? That'd be crazy. Okay. And then when you're ready, we're going to come forward onto our stomachs. So we're just finishing up with a bit of neck and chest extension, or actually really a spinal extension. We're gonna go into Cobra. So finding a nice comfortable spot on our stomachs. We're gonna bring our arms out slightly wider than our mat. And if your forehead is dropping here, you want your hands to be in line with your face. So you're kind of making this like low W goalpost-esque shape with those arms. And you're going to slightly rotate your legs out so your heels are facing and your toes are facing out. Not too wide, just a little bit. Finding that activeness in that center, we're going to start with Cobra Prep. So lifting that nose up as you lift your head and your chest. You're opening up in those collarbones. Your elbows are still down on that ground. Back of the neck nice and long. And then slowly melting that chest down. Then the forehead. Exhaling to lift. So we're just finding a thoracic extension, widening in those collarbones, resting on our ribs. Inhale at the top, and then exhaling to come down. And let's just do one more like this, everyone. And then if you want to take that full cobra the next time, you can. So you're just going to swipe that nose up, lift your head and your chest like you did before, but this time you're going to continue coming up, pushing into your hands as you straighten those elbows, coming up into that full extension, squeezing those glutes. You're peeling the hips up just as much as the rest of your spine. And then inhale at the top, and then exhale to slowly melt pelvis, stomach, ribs. Your elbows come down, and your head last. So again, if you're gonna take that full extension, you wanna be squeezing that glute, sending your pelvis up with you, just so you're not folding uncomfortably into that lower back, because that's not good. And wherever you are, let's just do 2 more like this. Going nice and slow, really thinking about that sequential movement as you come up and down. So your head leading as you come up, moving down that spine, and then as you come down, it's pelvis, it's just in reverse. Pelvis coming down first, and then moving up that spine. Finishing up our last one. once we return our forehead back onto the mat, let's bring our hands onto the mat and just push yourselves again one last time into child's pose. Maybe you want to take the knees out wider, toes together, just because if you do a full cobra, this will just get into your lower back a little bit better. And again, I'm talking into the microphone. I'm sorry. Just breathing here for one breath. And then maybe we want to get into the side. So you're gonna bring your left hand to the left side of that mat, stack that right hand on top, and melt everything down. Right sitting bone pulling towards that mat just so we feel a deeper stretch in the right ribs. Let's just inhale for one cycle of breath. And then when you're ready, let's go on to the other side. So right hand goes to the right side of the mat, left hand goes on top, and then we're just melting everything down. Again, left sitting bone pulling towards that mat so we feel that stretch now in the left side. Breathing in, nice and deep, and then exhaling. Let's come back into the center, and then we're gonna slowly belly button to spine, come all the way up into that kneeling position. And you are all done. Thank you so much for joining me on the mat today. I hope you enjoyed that little movement flow. Whether you are just easing back into regular movement or you just kind of need like a mental reset for yourself, I hope that did the trick. But have a wonderful rest of your week and I will see you next time. Bye.